Hey everybody, it's Jeff Peterson, and this is the Interstate of Music Podcast. And with me today, I've got guest Dennis Garrett. He is the owner of Dig Marketing, and Dig Marketing has some cool little projects going on. We're going to find out a little bit more about it. But welcome to the show, Dennis. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, for sure. First, before we kind of go backwards a little bit, tell me right now what Dig Marketing is all about and what you're kind of focused on.
Yeah. So currently, I'm doing the import and distribution of the Turkish cymbal line, and also a guitar amplifier, Udo Rosner guitar amplifiers. So those are the two primary things I'm focusing on at the moment, getting these things both off the ground.
Well, very, very cool. And clearly those are both in the music industry. So I want to kind of use that as a way to go all the way back to when did music start to kind of be a part, like let's call it a legitimate part of your life. And it can be where it started to inspire you, you started to play. When do you think it started to kind of be a little bit of your personality?
Very early on, you hear the typical stories of people banging out pots and pans and stuff, and that was me. So I really got the bug in, I vividly remember this. My parents had taken us down to, I grew up in Wisconsin, in Appleton, Wisconsin.
Nice.
And every year for Christmas, there would be a big parade downtown. And this particular year, they took me down, and in the window of Henry's Music, which was the shop at the time, there was a lighted Ludwig Tivoli kit. And I went, that's what I want, and that's what I want to do. And it pretty much instantly hit at that moment that that's what I was. So that was, I guess, 10 years old.
So a little bit was you like to hit things and make noise. But then you had a vision of picturing yourself behind a specific kit. And
that specific kit, yes.
Yeah, that's what's so crazy about it is like, and were you an outgoing kid that wanted everybody to watch you, or did you just want to be in your own world making, at that time, let's face it, making noise?
Yeah, at that time, I guess I've never been super outgoing, and that's why I would much prefer to be, to play in the studio with friends than actually play live. But doing the talent show and the things, when you're in 8th and 9th grade, and and then winning those, and that kind of cool stuff, it was really a great experience. So
it starts to give you that confidence, and it starts to put you in a position to be more comfortable being, whether it's in the spotlight or whether it's just being in front of people and sharing a little bit about who you are. Because let's face it, anytime we do anything, there's always that like fear of screwing up. And what I found by talking to musicians is no matter how much a person listening or watching them isn't necessarily hearing something that they did wrong or screwed up in a song or whatever, that musician hears like, oh my gosh, the whole world just heard that mistake, when in reality it's really in your own head. But it's scary. It's scary to kind of put yourself in that position. So, I mean, I think people really grow by taking music into their life and putting themselves out there like that and expressing themselves. Is that something you kind of felt helped build a little bit of a confidence outside of music?
Absolutely. Yeah. Because quite honestly, it's the thing that I do the best in life, really, is play drums. If there was one thing that I think that that I could say I'm actually better at than anything else in my life, it would be that.
So when you were going through like high school, were you thinking that you were going to be a drummer, or did you have like other ideas of what you were going to do for a living? Or were you like, I'm not going to college because I'm going to do music? Like where was your head at?
Yeah, it was definitely that I was going to be a drummer, in some way or another, And at that time, even in high school, I was gigging with bands, out, and getting paid, which was a really interesting thing when you're 16 years old. So yeah, that's all I really wanted to do was play drums.
Well, and what was growing up in Appleton, Wisconsin, I'm not going to sit here and try to fake everybody out that's listening to this across the world. Appleton, Wisconsin is not the hotbed of the opportunities for musicians to be gigging
No.
and making a lot of money. Like, where were you playing? Like, where were your gigs, and what did that musical environment feel like in Appleton, Wisconsin?
You know, in the 80s, surprisingly, there was an enormous amount of places to play during that time between playing.
We've got to go back to the 80s. I just want to put that out
we're
there
going back to
for
the 80s,
everybody to hear, because the 80s was the decade, period, end of story. We should still be in the 80s right now. That's the way I look at it.
Yeah, for live music, because it happens everywhere. And even in a town of that, 60,000 people, there was quite a few decent sized clubs, and in Green Bay, and of course Milwaukee. We would play in Milwaukee too. So there was a fairly big circuit to play during that time in a small geographic area.
And what was the type of music that you found yourself playing in the bands that you were playing in, or were you kind of a drummer for hire, or were you set to a specific band that you were like, these are my guys?
No, I've pretty much played with the same band, the same group of people. There seemed to be a revolving group of 10 of us, that were always in some band together at some point. But all, good friends that still to this day. And my best friend growing up, like he and I played in several bands together. He's a great player.
Well, give a little shout out to some of the band names that you had back then.
Oh, wow. Well, there would have been Warlock, Rockhaven. Boy, I'd have to think of some of the others. Vendetta, the Milwaukee band. So,
where did Warlock come from?
I think that came from the singer at the time who was really into all this mystical stuff and everything. And he was from Green Bay. And he was kind of into that whole thing. So that was his name.
Were you guys playing originals as well as, kind of the covers?
Yeah, it was primarily covers, but we would do like everybody else was at that time, trying to sprinkle in all of your original stuff that nobody wanted to listen to. But we did it anyway.
Do you have any tunes back then that you still like could jump behind a kit right now and play that original tune that you're like, man, this was actually pretty good? Or were they all terrible?
No, it wasn't all terrible. There was a lot of really good players, and surprisingly, in Appleton, Wisconsin, produced a lot of really, really talented people. So it was good stuff. Nothing that I think I'd, to this day, sit behind the drums and want to relearn, though. Certainly not.
You brought up that drum kit around Christmas time. There is a bar in Appleton, Wisconsin, that is Christmas all the time. What is the name of that bar?
Cleo's,
that's what it is. If anybody finds themselves in Appleton, Wisconsin, in July, in December, whenever, go to Cleo's, because that is an experience. I mean, nobody's dusting all of those Christmas ornaments hanging from the ceiling, are they?
I can't imagine that they would be.
I mean, it is to me. It is better than the bars that have all those dollar bills signed, stapled to the ceiling. Cleo's is like, you've got to go to Cleo's. So shout out to everybody out at Cleo's. Fun place to just hang out. So as you kind of moved forward with like, you got to make money, right? You graduate high school, you're kind of moving through. What were some of those next steps for you to figure out how to pay the bills?
The next step was my best friend and I, Rob Olson, who I mentioned earlier, got a job at the local music store in Appleton. So that was kind of what started paying, so we started actually making money, starting part-time and then eventually full-time. So we did that between playing and then worked together at this particular music store.
Because a lot of musicians, try to figure out how to make music part of their life by like going to college, studying music, be a music teacher, get into the educational side, all that kind of stuff. Was that ever like in your head that's how you wanted to take music, or was it just like, that's not me, I want to play?
Yeah, I just want to play. I would never have been a good educator or, that's, so I just really, yeah, I wanted to play. So I never had thought about pursuing that route.
How did you find yourself learning to play the drums? Did you go to lessons or?
Yes.
Yeah,
I was really incredibly fortunate. It was my first instructor was if you'd seen the movie Whiplash,
totally.
it was essentially that.
Wow.
He was a very mean and but with that
We won't give him a shout out then.
Mr. Hager, I'll give him a shout out. But he was the thing you had learned was your rudiments, and you learned them well, because if you didn't, you would be picking your sticks off of the floor and be, so after he threw them across the room and, and cursed at you. So I'm very fortunate that he started me off to actually learn the rudiments of playing and become a pretty skilled snare player. And then after that, I had the good fortune of finding an instructor. Her name was Audrey. Well, it still is Audrey Hendrickson. She works at Henry's, or well, she was at Henry's. Now she's at Hyde Music, still teaching to this day.
Wow.
My parents saw an ad in the newspaper or the Bargain Bulletin or something like that, saying that they gave drum lessons. So we went out to her farm, and that's really what got me going, because she was super patient, and she was in this great USO band in the 60s, an all-female band, which, at that time was pretty unheard of.
And pretty cool. Really
and
cool.
Vividly remember she had 2 high-end sonar kits that she had bought when she was in Germany, and that's what I learned on, opposite of each other. And she really taught me to play drum set, and just an incredible instructor.
So is it fair to say, like, as you kind of became a drummer, that's when you started to really feel a passion about it versus just wanting to play, but really loving to play? Because when you start to really learn a craft, it really kind of does turn into something where your passion starts picking up the more it becomes part of you.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, because by that time, when you've dedicated a lot of hours of your time practicing, so you don't want to waste a lot of time, and it is fun to just keep progressing and seeing how, so yeah, once I think I got, a little more skilled and was able to play with a lot of different people because of that skill, then it really started coming together.
That's awesome. So as you're moving along, you're starting to, obviously get to know a lot of people in the industry, different brands.
Yep.
When did you start to, because you've worked for, who else have you worked for in the industry?
So, I mean, I started, as I said earlier, with my best friend, Rob Olson, at Billy Bob's Music in Appleton, Wisconsin, which was a really cool music store. And then it closed down, and the first real big retail job after that was working for Washington Music Center, called Chuck Levin's Washington Music Center.
So quick, before you move on with that,
Yep.
Why did you think Billy Bob's was such a cool music store? What made it cool to you?
We were, for this tiny little store, and you got to remember, this is 1986, 1987 or something. We were the biggest BC Rich dealer in the United States out of this store. And that was before an internet. And we were like the biggest Remo drum, like there was these certain little things. There was, again, because there was so many players, it was really thriving. I mean, again, in the town of only 70,000 people or whatever, it was amazing how much gear we moved. And we always had cool stuff because the owner really kind of gave us carte blanche to just say, okay, you guys really know what's happening now, so order what you think is going to sell. So in that respect, we just got to buy the coolest stuff all the time, and it was that's why it was such a great store.
And isn't it funny that just personalities and just people in general, when he gave you that ability to buy what you thought was cool, that's also when people walked in, that's also what you sold because you thought it was that cool. Yeah. So your energy passed through it. So props to, the owner of Billy Bob's realizing that if you're going to buy something, you're also going to be the one that's selling it and wanting to sell it because you bought it for a reason. So there's some logic in that thinking. So that's cool because every store across the country, no matter what industry it is, if it's in that kind of independent stage, kind of that boutique niche type store, they're all so different, all so unique, and become their own little reasons to become a destination. And I think I think there's so much personality that, we've got to hold on to that as much as possible, even though, e-commerce, it's a thing, it's a convenience,
Yeah.
it's a way of doing business. And quite honestly, it's a way we do business at Interstate. But the reality is that we're not doing business at Interstate Music because we don't love, small little stores, and brick and mortar stores that are doing cool things and being unique. I love that. I personally love that. And we're trying to do the exact same thing with our site, being a little bit more boutique, niche, and different than just be, hey, you can buy stuff. We're really trying to be what musicians want to see or be, and have them feel like they're part of that. And I think that's exactly kind of why you love that store so much, because you felt like you felt like it was your store.
Yeah, really. We kind of did. We felt really a part of it. So yeah, that was really a great way to break into retail.
Oh, for sure,
Working at
definitely.
that
And
store
then
was
so your next steps were.
to go to Washington Music Center was out on the East Coast, which at the time was the largest music store in single location in the country. Huge, absolutely huge store. And I spent almost 9 years there.
So you up and
So
moved.
I did up and move. Yeah.
I mean, was that easy at that time? Was it exciting, or was it like scary as shit?
That it was exciting to finally get up and get out of Wisconsin,
Yeah,
really
sure.
it was great, to some place, geographically that was totally different, culturally that was completely different. And then to get thrown into that store was really quite an immersion, into retail, because it was huge. I think at that time there was, again, this was a single location store that had over 100 people working at it
Wow.
easily. Yeah, I mean, before internet, this is
Yeah.
pre-internet, nothing was
Yeah.
happening yet. And that was really a great experience.
And what did that do to your playing? I mean, you up and move. Your old band didn't move.
No. So I started playing with different people out there. So it was, similar situation, just playing regionally
Yeah.
in the area, and good bands, a lot of fun. But at that time, I was, the retail thing. It was a great gig. So I spent, quite a bit of time doing that, because you could actually make decent money doing it.
Sure.
So
Right.
so quite honestly, the playing kind of took a little bit of a backseat, to me working probably more than I should have.
And so when did dig marketing kind of start to become like a direction, a thought, something to take your own like ownership and concept and ideas to bring brands to life? When did that start to kind of be in your head? I mean, and how long was it kind of like, man, I would love to do something like this? Yeah, whether it's like whether you're in a job or whatever, like when did a passion of like bringing something to life on your own kind of become this like little internal burn, if you will?
Yeah, probably at the end of the retail career, because when you interface with these reps,
Yeah,
and you see, during that time, just that seems like the coolest gig in the world.
right.
Like you're just like, I think I should be doing that. So in the late, 90s, I already started thinking about, how I would like to just at least be in a rep, and,
Sure.
never thinking, that I would, be doing it myself. Typically you start as a sub rep. You start, just jump into some, decent rep gig right out of retail, and you kind of leapfrog into something into it. But yeah, that's kind of when it started. The
Well,
wheels started turning.
and I think, I mean, that what's cool about the way you kind of grew into it is you're a drummer. Okay. So that's fine. You're a drummer, but that doesn't mean, every drummer can start their own marketing company / take a brand and turn it into something. That retail experience of talking to percussionists as they're coming in, finding out that what they like, what they love, what's important, the differentiations between players and the different consistencies and nuances of other brands and why they favor this brand over that brand. What a unique, almost like 17 master's degrees you were getting in that retail experience for you to be dig marketing with Turkish Cymbals, and kind of starting with that. It's kind of a cool way. Do you feel as though you really had that baseline built because of that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it's just being well-rounded, and I've had the good fortune of being, worked in retail and good stores, and represented good companies, like Zuljan for nearly 17 years. You kind of see everything at that point. There's not much that you haven't seen,
Right.
So you take all of the things that you've learned from those experiences, good and bad, and try to do your own thing with that.
So I'm gonna get really basic on the world of cymbals, okay?
Sure. Yeah.
Turkish Cymbals, and I'm not talking about your brand Turkish Cymbals. I'm talking about the conversation people have about Turkish Cymbals as a location of fantastic manufacturing for cymbals. Tell me, what is this draw of cymbals that are Turkish cymbals, just in totality, other brands, everything. Why do drummers gravitate towards cymbals made in Turkey?
Typically, they gravitate there for a couple of different reasons, a lot of which is that it's, none of these are mass-produced cymbals. And when I say that, I don't mean that a mass-produced cymbal isn't a great cymbal, because clearly they are. But everything is so handmade that you really do, when you find that voice, that sound, it's going to be hard to find it anywhere else. So a lot of people really gravitate towards just the uniqueness, and they're inherently dark. Turkish cymbals have never been, really a very bright, let's say even, metal players have never really gravitated towards that sound. But even though they certainly make sounds like that, it's never really been kind of the focus of the Turkish sounds. Usually darker, kind of mysterious, washy, smoky sounding cymbals.
Very cool. So as you kind of decided what you wanted to bring to the drummers out there as far as a brand, you got Turkish Cymbals as a brand. I mean, how lucky was that day when you just kind of like woke up and said, I can actually have the name Turkish Cymbals be what I represent and handle, when everybody is going to search in today's e-commerce world. People are going to search Turkish Cymbals in a generic fashion, and your stuff's going to show up because it's the brand. That's awesome. Yeah.
It really is a great name to have. I'm really excited about it, because the company is, there's always this mystery about the Turkish companies, like who works there, and who is the artisans, and who's
right.
It's and it runs the gamut of two people, basically in a metal shed, making cymbals, to full factories like Turkish, which is a known name just because of it's Turkish, but
right.
it's the foundry is 25 years old, so it's been around.
It's well established,
It's well established, and it was and it's owned by Mehmet. There's two Istanbul cymbals that are companies that are really I would say kind of the pioneers of bringing the Turkish stuff really, aside from Zildjian, of course, to the United States. And it was two long time friends, Agop and Mehmet, and they started Istanbul, the cymbal company, together. Agop had passed away and they split up, and now there's two Istanbuls. There's Istanbul Mehmet and Istanbul Agop. But Mehmet owns Turkish, so it's his company. It's his side. It's his, can't call it a side hustle. It's his. He wanted to kind of do it to do more experimental things and
Cool.
And kind of try to establish it as a bit more of a rock and roll, entity. So that's that's what I'm going to continue to try to do here. And
That's exciting. Now, so how long have you been, like, what was the process of, and you don't have to give me the financial details or the percentage, whatever, all that stuff. That's not the details I'm looking for. What was that process of working with them, seeing their production capabilities and creating that strategy of what that looks like for you here in the US and all that goes into it? Was this a challenging process, a really amazing process? Like, where are you in that process as we sit right now as far as launch?
So at the last NAMM show in Anaheim in 2020, I spent a day, basically the last day I was there, just going around to all of the cymbal companies, just listening to everything that was there and everything that was represented. And I kept going back to the Turkish company because not only did they were the cymbals great sounding, but the people were really just got a good vibe. They were just really, really good people. And we didn't talk about anything there about distribution. And went back home and I had thought about it for a couple of months, and I decided to reach out to them and spoke to Samaya, her name is, who does all the export, and we struck up a conversation. It still seemed a little funky, there's always the language barrier between us, so there's some things that were unknown. And then I had been talking to an old friend of mine, Kevin Packard, who now works for Pearl, but he was at Ludwig for a number of years prior to Pearl, and that's how I got to really know him. And we had just been talking about cymbals, and I said, yeah, I'm talking to this company called Turkish. And he goes, oh, have you spoke to Samaya, And he said, I've known her for 20 years. They're really awesome people, and they've really logistically got it together. Pearl had worked with them in the past on some things.
Sure.
I think it was cymbal. So that's when I just went, okay, I'm going to do it. And that was in March of last year. So.
Well, tough. Weird timing to just make a decision and then everything that we went through. But
yeah,
it's at what stage are we at? With Turkish cymbals and what it's looking like.
Yeah.
There's so many details that go into it. We're extremely excited to launch your product. And I know that there's a lot into making the final decision, like, yep, this is the timing, let's do this. But but where are we standing as far as when is the U.S. Get real excited about getting Turkish cymbals out in everybody's hands?
So we had made some changes to some names and fonts and different things, that
the
I
details.
think will, a little bit, it will be a little more acceptable in the United States.
Sure.
So they willingly agreed to, like, okay, we'll go with some of these names and we'll change these fonts and we'll change colors. We changed logos. Since March, I had been getting product in, several cymbals, and just kept listening because there's so many of them. There's hundreds and hundreds of cymbals.
Right.
So I had been kind of going through and deciding, okay, this is what we're going to keep, for the U.S. and this isn't going to work. And was initially just going to go with the way it was, and then at the request of my friend Kevin, he's like, I think we should you should change the font and you should do some tweaks, change a couple of names. So that's where we're at right now with getting all the artworks over to them, but we're just waiting on stamps and
Sure.
some other things.
But final stages. We're
Final
close.
stages now. Yeah. So we the product is all decided. We're building a site. We're building a US site, because we're not going to carry all of the models. So we want to kind of really condense it down to like, this is what we're carrying in the United States. So the US site it's being built. Of course, the content has been a little bit challenging just because we've changed logos. So photography right now is been on pause.
The world's about, oh, we have all this done. Oh, we're gonna have to redo all that.
Yeah, so we basically started all over. So but a lot of upfront, but in the long run, it's gonna be a good thing. So it's close. I'd say 60 to 90 days. It looks like.
Well, and I'll tell you what, Dennis. I mean, I certainly appreciate it. I appreciate the process. I appreciate the care, the history behind the manufacturing and the quality behind it. And you're not just forcing this into the marketplace. You're waiting until it's what drummers are going to be able to stand behind, the consistency in brand and name and sound, and availability, all the things that are going to be important to drummers moving forward, that are going to, take a look at this, take a listen to this, and invest. And I love that you're not just forcing it into the market for your own financial purposes. And I love that that's part of this journey, is the caring about the consistency, the quality, down to the logo, down to the naming, down to the branding, because the quality of the product is there. But the other details are real details. And I can appreciate that. And I think anybody that is looking into something new, something unique, something that has that vibe and that sound that they're looking for, to definitely check out, Turkish Cymbals when they launch. And when you say it's go time, Interstate Music is going to be right there with you, telling everybody it's go time. So, Dennis, thank you so much for being part of this podcast and sharing your story, your journey, everything about it. And dig marketing, man. I mean, hashtag I dig it,
That was the intent. Yeah.
Yeah, it's solid. Solid stuff. So, Turkish Cymbals, Dennis Garrett, dig marketing. This is the Interstate of Music Podcast. I am Jeff Peterson. Peterson out.